Hello everyone, this is International Master Marc Esserman, and tonight we're going to look at my game with Grandmaster Joel Benjamin from the New York International Chess Tournament of 2010. And Grandmaster Benjamin is well known for being a former three-time U.S. champion, and in addition, he was the chief consultant for the IBM team in their historic man versus machine match against world champion Garry Kasparov. So the game started out with me as white, playing my favorite 1e4, and Benjamin wanted to get me out of theory as quickly as possible because I have a reputation for knowing many sharp variations, so he wanted to have me play on my own and think for myself. So instead of playing some standard variations of Sicilian, maybe he was worried about the Mora Gambit, or standard e5 or Caro-Kann or French. He went for something more offbeat, and he's well known for playing some offbeat stuff. So he played 1d6, which looks like it's going to be a Pierce defense after d4. He could play knight f6, but now he transposed into a modern defense after 2g6. And here I have some options. I can try and play King's Indian with 3c4 if I want to, and he would transpose with knight f6, and then white would play knight c3. It would be a King's Indian. Or instead I just played classical variation knight f3. He played bishop g7. And again, I can go for a classical modern defense or Pierce with just 4 knight c3, knight f6, and bishop e2, and this is very solid and standard. After castle, white's bishop usually goes to e3, white slightly better. But I knew that he wanted a more positional game, so I wanted to sharpen the play as quickly as possible. So instead I went for sharp move bishop c4, which was a favorite of world champion Mikhail Tal, who was probably the most legendary attacker of all time. So Benjamin could play the more normal knight f6 here, but instead he went for the very rare hippopotamus, or the happy hippo. He played e6, and again he's trying to confuse me, playing an opening named after an animal like the hippopotamus. And the idea of this opening is to basically lie still in the water. Could also say it's like a porcupine, and just play d6, e6, g6, b6, a6, h6 if I've already said h6, and then put the bishop on b7, knights on d7 and e7, and just wait for the more inexperienced player to do something silly. So that's definitely why he chose this position, because you would think that the happy hippopotamus would be an opening that I would have no experience in. But ironically, it's an opening that I have a tremendous amount of experience in, because for many years when I just wanted to have fun online playing chess, I would play this opening in Blitz and Bullet. It's a great opening just to make in a few seconds to try and get a time advantage on your opponent. And then I eventually realized that it was a great opening to try and flag and defeat computers in Blitz chess, because they just had no idea how to break into the position. And you can just sit there like a hippo and wait for them, and then eventually you would win on time. Of course, they could also break into the position and checkmate you. So in the comments section, I'll link a YouTube video where I'm playing black and the hippopotamus against Computer Impossible on chess.com, and you guys can take a look at that. So the game continued. Bishop b3 for me, because I want to stop him from playing d6, d5. If he gets that in, position could lead to a rough equality. So I don't want to release the tension here. So now if he plays d5, I can play e5, and I have a big space advantage. So he continues with the happy hippo, knight d7. I play bishop g5, a move that machines have played against me many times in these positions. And he goes knight e7, continuing with his hippopotamus. And I play queen d2, which is a very important nuance, threatening bishop h6 to trade off his fianchetto bishop, which would make his kingside weak. So he doesn't want to castle, then bishop h6, and I'd have a really large advantage. So they have to play h6, bishop e3. And many would say that I've lost a tempo in this position because, I moved my bishop from g5 back to e3. But in fact, now he can't castle, because if he does, I can take on h6. So that produces some serious problems for black. And so he played b6, of course, the next step in the hippo, knight c3, and bishop b7. Again, he cannot castle. Computers in these positions have castled both long and short against me. It was just totally random what they would do. They really didn't have any idea what to do. As you can see, white can't really proceed forward because the hippo is lying in wait for him. So I decided to castle short here. And now, when I'm playing black against the computers online, I'll usually play the eccentric maneuver king f8 to g8 to h7 to defend h6 so that I could castle by hand, as they say. And although this maneuver looks completely ridiculous, it actually has some pedigree because it was played by world champion Boris Spassky against Tigran Petrosyan himself in the 1966 title match. And Petrosyan wasn't able to break through the defenses. So that's why the Happy Hippo, it has some merit. It's been played at the top level. It's obviously a rare guest, but it's not without its sting. So even great players have trouble breaking this position. So that's why computers also have struggled. So instead of playing king f8, Benjamin played knight f6, which is a perfectly active and reasonable move, hitting the my e4 pawn. So queen d3 just looks awkward and uncoordinated. So instead I play the logical move d5, shutting down his bishop on b7. And here Benjamin has a choice. He can play either pawn takes pawn or e5, and it's critical that he chooses e5. Why? Because he's completely behind in development. He does not want to open up the game, as he's not going to be able to castle, and my rooks can then take over the center on the e-file. So he must play e5, closing the game and transposing into a King's Indian-like structure, and that would give him more time to organize a defense and maybe eventually, hopefully, get in f5 one day and get some counterplay. Of course, his bishop on b7 would be completely out of play, and he'd still be worse, and maybe he'd have to bring it back to c8. And it doesn't help that his pawn's on b6, weakening his queenside in these locked structures. So the hippopotamus is not really a great opening, and white has a clear advantage here, but after e5, it would still be a long game. But instead, he wanted to be provocative in this position and really go for it, so he played pawn takes pawn, e takes d5, and this is a critical mistake. And after this, there's really no turning back. Obviously, I played e takes d5, and now the e-file is open for my rooks. And again, he cannot castle because the bishop takes h6. So my plan is very simple. Rook fe1, rook e2, rook ae1, putting pressure on his center and on his king. He really doesn't have any answer for that. So again, he continued in the hippo fashion with a6. I played rook fe1, easy move. And now he finally went for king f8, but it would have been better if he had played e6, e5, and kept that e-file closed. And so I played rook e2, simple move. Again, king to g8, trying to castle by hand, but this is taking too much time. He's falling way behind. You can see that his rooks are cut off on h8, a8. They're not really playing, whereas my rooks on e2 and e1 are very active. So this position is already actually strategically lost, but it's just a matter of converting now. Benjamin played b5, hoping for maybe b4 just to cause some mischief. But I did not allow that and played bishop f4 first, hitting the knight on e7. And goes for knight f5. And now a3, stopping b4. And you can see his pieces are poorly coordinated, and again his rooks are struggling to participate in the game. So he went for queen d7, maybe hoping one day to connect his rooks with king h7. But after h3, I'm already threatening to trap his knight with g4. So he has to do something about that. He's got to either play h5 or g5. Both of these moves weaken his king tremendously. So there are no good options for him. After g5, bishop h2 is pretty easy for me, and there are going to be too many weaknesses around the black king, especially if it has to go to h7. And then that diagonal is weak on the b1 to h7 diagonal. So there are no good options. So we went for h5, but that weakens the g5 square. And tried to exploit that with knight to e4, aiming for g5 one day, but also sacrificing two pawns. If he goes for knight takes e4 and rook takes e4, bishop takes b2, but this is really not a pawn that you want to be taking. And I could shut his bishop out with c3. After bishop takes a3, bishop g5, his dark squares are completely collapsing after bishop f6. And you can look at this for yourself to see how this position is hopeless for black. So instead of grabbing the material, he went back to knight h7, a move that looks very passive and strange, but the idea was to eventually play rook e8. He can't play rook e8 right now because I have knight f6 check, winning the rook on e8. So we played knight h7. And now I played c3, stopping bishop takes b2. Just calm, taking it easy. Now he played for rook e8. I don't have knight f6 now because of knight takes f6. So instead I went knight fg5, threatening knight takes h7. And then after king takes h7, knight g5 check would win the rook. So while the position is obviously lost, against Grandmasters the game is never over until it's over. And they're going to try and put up the best possible resistance. We played f6, trying to kick my knight, trying to pose some sort of complications. Now obviously it looks like the king is really weak, and in hindsight that's what happened. But still, you have to win the game. As they say, the hardest thing to do in chess is to win a one game. I actually happen to think the hardest thing to do is to win a lost game. But they're both still very difficult to do. It's just hard to win a chess game. Now I can play knight e6, which is a really simple move here. And that would lead to a dominating position. But is there something better? So now it is your turn to get involved. And can you find the crushing combination here? I'm going to give you some time to think about that, so you can pause the video. And I will be back. Okay, so we're back. Let's see how you guys did. Those of you who noticed that king is incredibly weak on the a2 to g8 diagonal, you're on the right track, and that's exactly what I noticed when he played f6. So I went for the crushing blow, knight c5. And if he plays pawn takes knight, then of course rook takes rook check wins instantly. So instead he went for rook takes rook, queen takes rook. And now if he doesn't take the knight, we'll get to that in a second. If he takes the knight, if queen c8, then just the simple queen e8 check wins easily. Rook takes e8, knight f8, and the bishop on b7 will be hanging. That's a totally lost position. So instead, Benjamin had no choice but to play pawn takes knight. And now the bishop finally enters the fray with d6, discovered check. If he goes for king f8, then knight e6 check, king g8, and knight takes c5, discovered check would win the queen. So he had to play c4. And if you go for knight c5 and you don't see everything, then you could just end up down a piece here. And why did you sacrifice it all? You should have just played the simpler move, knight e6, instead of knight c5. But after c4, bishop takes c4 check, b takes c4, queen takes c4 check, and now it is two pieces that we're down. But what happens if he plays king f8? Does knight e6 check, king g8, knight c5 check, queen f7 win? Is that the crushing blow? Is that the reason that we sacrificed two pieces? I'll give you guys a few seconds to think about it, and you can get back to me. But we have much better than knight e6 check. We have rook e7 interfering with the queen's guard of f7. And it's just checkmate after that. If knight takes e7, queen f7, checkmate. And if knight takes d6, then just bishop takes d6. And an instant mate on f7, so Grandmaster Benjamin resigned. Well, I hope you all enjoyed this game, and while it may seem that the happy hippo was not so happy tonight, I would say that the main mistake in this game was not the hippopotamus itself, but playing e takes d5 early on instead of e5 locking the game, because if you're playing the hippopotamus, you're already giving away many moves of development, so you have to be extremely careful, and you do not want to open up the game earlier. It can lead to immediate disaster. So feel free to give the hippopotamus a try, especially in blitz, and I would say bullet would be even more effective. And I hope you all have fun with your happy hippo. Thank you.